We've talked about it. The fact that all three of us were raised in the church, like if we were better off being inundated with just lies, but in the safety of religion, as opposed to
when we were watching Euphoria, we were like, thank God we grew up in the church. All these girls are just getting railed out. They're on pills. They're selling nudes to pedophiles on the internet.
Yep.
I mean, it's horrific. Doesn't it make you grateful when you watch that show?
No, I want to be selling nudes to pedophiles, honestly.
Yeah, well,
I didn't get to take that opportunity. You know what I mean? Like I didn't.
So
have that
that's
chance.
a television show. Like I don't know. Like
Now that's what it's like, right?
Is it?
I talked to my friend's brother who's 15, and he said they do this thing on Instagram where they rate the girls, where they'll just post a picture of one of the girls in the class, and all the guys comment like about their features, personality, and would they date or would they not? And like guys will rate like 2 out of 10s.
I mean, that's
girls.
a shitty thing to do, but weren't they doing that in the 50s outside of a diner somewhere?
Yeah,
right. They just did that on the radio.
I found a piece of paper.
I mean, I thought you were going to say something much worse. Yeah, that is shitty. Shitty to do.
But that's how Facebook got started.
Where does he live, this kid?
Houston. I mean, I couldn't.
Is
have
it
dealt
like
with
that
something
bad? Like,
that.
have you talked to him about the school shootings and shit? Is he doing the drills? No, I'm kidding. I don't talk to anyone that age.
Yeah.
So are they doing drills? Is that really happening? I
Yes.
guess it is,
Yes,
right?
they are.
I was talking.
Yeah.
I was on
Kevin's
a date
kids
with
are
somebody
going through it.
Yeah, they have my fucking 9-year-old is doing shooter drills.
Dude, that's
And she's like,
fucking...
Daddy, you got to walk in a serpentine pattern, Daddy, to avoid
Dude,
the
that
bullets.
is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
pretty bleak.
That is bleak.
She also just believes 9/11 happened and didn't ask why.
What the fuck is wrong with her? It's the cereals you feed them.
Dude, I'm telling something, man. It's because I
You
vaccinated them.
this bitch into being a sheep.
Yeah. No, would you learn 9/11? Well, what happened? Oh, people flew their planes into the towers. Hey, can I play Fortnite when I get home? I'm like, well, did they
I'd like to
tell you why it happened? She's, no. I'm like, interesting.
Dude, I remember like being stoned and having them going, they hate us for our freedom and believing that.
Right. Yeah.
And then like years later, I'm like, oh, I was so stupid. Like I was just taken for a ride like everybody else.
When did you flip on that, Tim?
When did you get into conspiracy theories in general?
I'd been listening to Alex Jones since 1999 or 2000, like when on the GCN network, like I would, no, like almost
That's
immediately
what it says
after.
on his Instagram profile.
Yeah.
Watching Alex Jones since 99.
Since 99. Ride or die for Alex since 99.
AJ all day.
When did I really get into them? I was always kind of flirting with them, but I was still not swayed by them until really what got me into them hardcore. And I've been into them for a while, but the financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because when that happened and I realized how everything was like pretend.
Yep.
Like the entire economy was based on nothing.
Yeah.
You got to remember that I was like, not like people imagine like all of us mortgage guys knowing that this was going to happen, or no one really did. Like I was handing my family out my business card. I thought we were just selling mortgages, and like I bought one of those mortgages and I was like, yeah, they're a fixed rate for 2 or 3 years and then they'll adjust. But at that time we'll all just refinance. Like I was 22. I didn't know. And then when the economy came crashing down, I knew that, like, we knew we were trying to make money. We knew that. I didn't realize how everything, because every adult, every person, I mean, I was working for guys. Mm-hmm. These were middle-aged guys, some of them, that had wives and families and kids and houses and cars. And then we have the president coming on TV and being like, Americans are home ownership's at its highest level. 70% of Americans own houses, which everyone should have went, how the fuck did that? What do you mean? But it was all, and then when that started to happen, I started to realize, because I was like, well, my parents, like, my mom went to college. My dad didn't go to college. But I was like, all of our parents, like everybody that we know is kind of fucked. Mm-hmm. But I was like, then I was around all these people who were just making all kinds of money, essentially doing, selling these mortgages that were backed by nothing and based on nothing. Yeah. And then when that whole thing started to fall apart and unravel, I found myself questioning a lot of other things and being like, well, if everybody was so wrong about this, And then a lot of people, you grow up and you realize that a lot of people were just sucking as much money out of the system as they could before the eventual collapse. But that was what started making me think like, oh, I bet that there's a lot of other instances where it's like, I started to become very, very cynical about everything after that happened. And I would say I started to get into them then. And I had been into them, but that's when I started going a little deeper in them.
Yeah.
And like, how does the economy work? What is the US dollar backed by? You know, like I started questioning a lot of those things. Does the president do what we all think they do? Like, is this
the internet started to become more predominant at that point too, so you could investigate this stuff easier.
Yeah, and I just started reading a lot. And then really the thing that really got me was a book called Family Secrets by Russ Baker. That was the book that I read, and I read it in 2007 when the economy crashed at Borders. I bought it in Long Island and Borders, where I used to jerk off in the bathroom drunk because I went to the California Pizza Kitchen, got hammered, and I would jerk off in the Borders bathroom and then go home like an American.
Like a good American.
And I went into Borders. Was it Barnes & Noble? No, it was Borders at that time. Or maybe it was sold to Barnes & Noble, whatever. And I went in and I got this book, Family of Secrets by Russ Baker, which I really can't recommend enough. And I read it, and after I read it, I went, okay. Because things started to make sense to me that didn't make sense. And I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Because you think to yourself, you're like, how have the Bushes, like, been in the White House? Like, you got to remember, H.W. was a vice president and a president for one term. So that's 12 years.
Yep.
And his son was a president for 2 terms. So that's 8 years, right? So that's 20 years. Most of my life, there was a Bush in the White House doing something. And it was interesting to me why. I'm like, why is... And then all the other books that came out were like, Bush is an idiot. Bush is dumb. Remember, that was a whole genre of books. The Bush is a dummy and he's a cowboy. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not explaining
nothing. Yeah.
Anything. And this is what we're doing now with Trump. Like, he's Russia. He's orange. He's the buffoon. He's But so that book opened my eyes to this idea that the Bushes were not masters as much as they were servants. Like, they are masters, clearly. But they serve a class of people that I'd never heard of, really. That I'd never done any meaningful research into. This group of very powerful, very wealthy people that were always kind of behind the scenes. And then I started reading about things like when FDR was president, there were a lot of wealthy industrialists in this country were going to have a coup. They wanted to overthrow FDR.
Really?
Yeah. And there was a general, and I forget the name, Ben, like Jamie would have had the name already. Thanks. He's playing with the dog.
You got to slap him around a little bit.
You know? FDR coup. There was a general that they'd all got behind, and this is not really taught in history books, and you have to look all of this shit up, right? And I forget the guy's name. Attempted coup against FDR.
Smedley Butler.
Smedley Butler was
That's
a general.
A good name.
And they were gonna there was all these plans, dude, to march on Washington and
really,
yeah,
take it by force.
Yeah, and it was never really brought up and talked about, and then maybe 20 years later or whatever, or 25 years later, Kennedy gets popped.
Yeah.
So you start to piece this stuff together and you start to read about this and you start to go, oh, that group of people really is very uncomfortable with democracy on any level, even the Republic. They don't want anybody being able to impact their livelihoods and cost them billions of dollars, which makes sense to an extent when, people go, well, if Kennedy is going to stop us from mining in the Amazon basin and stealing these minerals, or if Kennedy's going to make it harder for us to drill for oil, or if the CIA is not going to play ball and overthrow the governments in these Latin American countries so that United Fruit can go in there. And that's why a lot of these governments were overthrown because, American corporations, multinational, big corporations, British corporations, the whole coup in Iran was BP, British Petroleum. They were going to nationalize the oil and they were going to, so if these governments were not playing ball with American corporate interest, the CIA found a way to get rid of them.
Yep.
Or the CIA found a way to foment a coup in their own country. So when you start reading all about that shit, you start understanding, you're like, well, why is the CIA doing this? Who are they working for? And you're like, oh, it's the same people the Bushes are working for, that same crew. And it's not 10 guys in a room. And that took me a while to realize too, because you think, oh, it's just these 8 guys smoking cigars. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there are lots of collections of 8 guys smoking cigars.
Sure.
But it's a class of people that's ever evolving, ever changing. They don't all like each other. They don't all have the same interests, but a lot of them have very similar interests. And the way Russ Baker said, he's like, these people will sue each other. They'll fight each other. They'll take each other to court. But if an outsider threatens them, they will unite immediately to vanquish that outsider.
Mm-hmm.
If you need, go get a potato and put a Marlboro Light in its mouth and watch that and then press play on your phone.